All right, so this is kind of take two. This is kind of what you're going to miss on, oh gosh, what does day say? Today's Tuesday. This is what you're going to miss on Wednesday. I'm kind of looking ahead here. So, as we just talked about, the kings and queens eventually stop saying no to spending money on ocean exploration and they start saying yes. And that's because they have a purpose. They want to find a way by water to get to the riches of the Indies. And because of that, the age of exploration begins. So, I'm going to get rid of myself here so you can see everything. And please understand that I am moving through the age of exploration pretty quickly. When the age of exploration starts, it starts because the kings and queens of Europe have a goal to find a way by water to get to the riches of the Indies, right? We can't go by land anymore. That Silk Road is blocked. So now we want to go by water. And obviously, if we knew then what we know now, we would know the right way, maybe the fastest way to do that. But back then, they knew very little about what the earth looked like. They knew very little about the shapes of the continents and what was out there. In fact, if you remember, people in Europe didn't even know that the Americas were there. And so they were going without a lot of knowledge. So we did talk in class that Portugal was the very first power country to start to send people out into the ocean in search of a way to get to the Indies. And it was actually Prince Henry of Portugal whose job it was to make sure that Portugal was the first country to find a way to get to the Indies by water. In fact, Prince Henry of Portugal was so determined to do this that he started the very first school to teach sailors how to navigate the ocean. No one had been out in the ocean before, and he figured it's something that you might need to learn. So they had a whole school where they taught people about sailing and map reading and map making. And Prince Henry of Portugal decided that the best way to get from Portugal to the Indies, which is over here, would be to go around Africa. But what makes that a little bit scary for them is if you look here, no one had really explored much south of the Canary Islands. So they really knew that the land continued here, but they really didn't know how far south it went to get around Africa. They didn't really know for sure that you could go around Africa. They certainly didn't know the shape of Africa's borders. And so there was a lot of unknown. And so there was a lot of planning that went into it in a way to get to the riches of the Indies by going around Africa. And Portugal sent their first explorer in 1487. His name was Bartholomew Diaz. And if you look at the map here, Bartholomew Diaz set sail, like I said, in 1487. We're going to look at the red line to see his route. If you look, we follow the red line. He left Portugal, Spain's fart, and traveled really close to the coast of Africa. That was on purpose because, again, they had no idea what shape Africa was, how far south they would have to go. And so they hugged tight to the coast of Africa. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that the closer you are to the coast, the rougher the waters are. And as the crew got around here, the crew was so very, very ill and very, very sick. But to make matters worse, they actually ran out of food. They had not realized just how far south they would have to travel to get around Africa and head to the Indies. So once the crew of Bartholomew Diaz's ship reached the southern tip of Africa, the crew forced Bartholomew Diaz against his will to turn around and head home to Portugal, not accomplishing their goal. And so they end up going back to Portugal. Now, you might think, well, if he failed at what he was trying to do, why would he be famous and in a history book? That is because of that very famous phrase, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Back in Portugal, Prince Henry of Portugal learned from all of the mistakes of Bartholomew Diaz. One, he went too close to the coast and the water was too rough. So if we try again, we'll go a little further out. Two, we did not pack enough supplies. So when we go again, we'll simply pack more supplies. And three, they now knew a lot more about the shape of the coast of Africa based on the observations of Bartholomew Diaz. They have a much better idea of the shape and size of Africa. So Bartholomew Diaz did not accomplish his goal of making it to the Indies. He was the first person to make it to the southern tip of Africa. But if you look 10 years later, Portugal is going to try again. In 1497, this guy, Vasco da Gama, is going to take all the lessons learned from Diaz and set sail further out from the coast where the waters are calmer, bringing more supplies. They make it past the southern tip of Africa, which was titled the Cape of Good Hope, in between Africa and Madagascar, and successfully made it to the Indies. And indeed, Portugal was the first power country to find a way by water to get to the Indies. They were the first, but that didn't mean that the other power countries were going to stop. Now, if you take a look at the dates that are here, 1487 was the first attempt and the failure. 1497 was Portugal's success. If we think about the other explorer we know very well, Christopher Columbus, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. If you think about when 1492 would be, it would be right in between Bartholomew Diaz and Vasco da Gama, meaning when Christopher Columbus was sailing out into the ocean, all he knew was that Diaz had failed, that going around Africa didn't work for Portugal. He had no idea that in 5 years, da Gama would be successful at this. So when we think about what Christopher Columbus was thinking at the time, he's saying, listen, Portugal tried to go around Africa and failed. He was working, even though he was born in Italy, Christopher Columbus was working for the Queen of Spain. And since they did not know the Americas were there, his brilliant idea was, if I just sail directly west, I will reach the riches of the Indies. Now, we know that isn't what he actually did. We know that he landed in the Americas, thought he was in the Indies all 4 times. All right. But when he went back to Spain, he told them that he made it to the Indies. And of course, they believed him. And so now what Europe knows is if you sail, or at least what they think is, if you sail west, you will make it to the Indies. And that meant that other explorers were going to do just that. And the next explorer I want to talk about, I give him the nickname Thinker Dude. And I give him the name Thinker Dude because, well, he used his pork chop quite well and changed the world forever. Now, Thinker Dude's real name, Amerigo Vespucci. Now, Amerigo Vespucci, he was doing exactly what Columbus was doing. He was sailing west to try to make it to the Indies. And he believed it could be done because Columbus just came back to Europe and said, hey, I sailed west and I made it to the Indies. So Amerigo Vespucci goes and does the same thing. You can see in red here in 1499 was his first journey. And this is why I call him Thinker Dude. He made his first journey, landed in the Americas, and went back to Europe. And unlike Columbus, he started thinking. He thought about things like, that trip was really short. That was really all the way in the Indies. That should have taken a whole lot longer. He also thought about some of the observations that people had made over time of what the Indies looked like. And where he landed didn't look anything like those observations. And so Amerigo Vespucci, Thinker Dude, took another journey. This time in 1501, he went a little bit further south. And the whole time that he was there, he was thinking. And what he was thinking was, I don't think this is the Indies. And he thought to himself, I think that where we are, where Columbus landed, is a whole new land. And that was when he went back to Europe and shared his thoughts with mapmaker Martin Woltschmuller. And for the very first time, a map was created with this new land. And Martin Woltschmuller needed to give this new land a name. And since it was Amerigo Vespucci who figured out that there was a new land out there, the land was named after him. America was named after Amerigo. So now that they figure out that the Americas are there, the kings and queens are like, okay, the riches of the Indies, they're cool. But think about the riches and the power that we can get by claiming this new land, the Americas. And so for a lot of kings and queens in Europe, they started to kind of ignore the riches of the Indies, and the new goal came to be to claim as much of this land and find all the riches and treasures in the Americas. Now, I want you to take a look at this map. This is the Americas. And I want to show you, once the European countries went after the Americas, they started to take control of this land. And so I have a key here. We had 5 power countries, and only 4 of them are going to claim land in the Americas. And you can see the title of this map, European Control of the Americas in the 1500s, the Age of Exploration. I'm going to color code Spain in red, the land that Spain takes over in the Americas. I'm going to color the land that France claims in blue, the land that Portugal claims in green, and the land that England claims in yellow, which means one of our power countries didn't end up claiming any land, and that was Italy. So we're kind of done talking about Italy for now. So I'm going to go ahead and show you here. You can see I shaded in all of that land in green. That is because that is the land that Portugal claimed in South America. And once Portugal claimed that land, by the way, today is called Brazil. People from Portugal moved to that land and they brought with them their culture. And remember that part of their culture is their language. And so they started to speak Portuguese in that land. And today that land is Brazil, and they still speak Portuguese in Brazil today. That culture kind of maintained and continued. Now, as I show you what some of the other explorers in history did, they came to the Americas. One explorer named Vasco Nunez de Balboa came to Central America and he claimed that land for Spain. He also decided, as he looked out into the Pacific Ocean, he decided to claim the Pacific Ocean for Spain as well. A little silly, I know. Another explorer, my favorite of all of them, his name was Juan Ponce de Leon, went in search of a treasure called the Fountain of Youth. He never did find that treasure because it doesn't exist, but instead he ended up claiming what is now Florida for Spain. Another explorer, conquistador Hernando Cortez, destroyed 4 million Aztecs, 4 million Native Americans, and took over their land and claimed it for Spain, the land that is now Mexico. Another Spanish explorer, conquistador Francisco Pizarro, conquered a Native American tribe full of 9 million people called the Incas and took all their land and claimed it for Spain. And once they did, Spain claimed all the land around them. Another explorer, his name was Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, went in search of a city made completely of gold called the Seven Cities of Gold. And he never did find the Seven Cities of Gold, but he did claim all the land he passed through for Spain. You can see, guys, that very quickly Spain is taking over and taking much of the land in the Americas and claiming it as their own. Now, France will send some explorers. Jacques Cartier will come over and they will begin to claim some land in what is now Canada for Spain, and for France, pardon me. And France will also claim this land here in what is now the United States of America. So you can see here, guys, that Spain has definitely claimed the most land, but France has claimed some land in North America and Portugal some land in South America. Because we live in North America, we're not going to really talk about South America anymore. And so we're really kind of done talking about Portugal. Portugal doesn't claim any land in North America, so we're kind of done. Now, the one thing you need to realize is, where in the world is England? And unfortunately, I can't add England onto this map with the title as it is. The only way that I can put England on this map is if I cross out the in the 1500s, because England, for whatever reason, doesn't really claim any land in the Americas until the 1600s. They're kind of slow to join the party here. And so we will be able to add England if we change that to the 1600s there. And you can see there isn't a lot of land left for England to claim. But here's what the land England will claim. England will claim that little piece of land that I showed you in yellow right here. Now, what's really interesting is Spain claimed all that land in red in about 40 years. That's quick. England, it will take them 100, I'm doing the math in my head here, 100, I think 26 years just to claim this little chunk of yellow. And again, they won't even start until the 1600s. So our main focus, guys, is going to be on England because it will be England's story that will eventually lead to the birth of the United States of America. So I'm going to stop the video here, and the next one will pick up and we'll learn about how England claimed the land in the Americas.